Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Business Weekly Show here on City TV, your most watched business show in the country, and I am your host, Michael Obodu. In the next 1 hour, I'll be bringing you a wrap of all the major business news stories for the week. So if you're ready, let's go. For the government, going to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, for a bailout was for a number of reasons. Well, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has revealed that the country's alarming energy sector debt levels of about 17 billion Ghana cedis was one of the major contributors. This, he says, was the doing of the John Mahama administration. Government was recently compelled to go to the International Monetary Fund (IMF) for a bailout after efforts at some of its homegrown solutions, like the electronic transfer levy, failed to raise enough revenue to improve the country's debt situation. The levy, for instance, was reported to have only raised about 10% of the targets set by the government for the period since its inception. After a couple of meetings with members of government and some stakeholders, the IMF has reaffirmed its commitment to support Ghana following the conclusion of its visit to the country. Many were eager to hear from the Vice President on the government's move. He explained that the country's alarming energy sector debt is a major contributor to the woes of the country.
So we had direct COVID-19 expenditures amounting to 12 billion Ghana cedis. We had the banking sector cleanup costs amounting to 25 billion Ghana cedis, and the excess capacity payments amounting to 17 billion Ghana cedis. And the data shows that the three items, when you take COVID, banking sector cleanup, and the excess capacity payments, cumulatively amounted to 54 billion Ghana cedis. And that is the equivalent of $7 billion US dollars. Three items, $7 billion US dollars that of expenditure which had to be taken. You couldn't say you wouldn't spend to rescue the banking sector because you are in trouble. The economy will collapse. You couldn't say you won't pay excess capacity payments because you have power outages. You couldn't say you wouldn't spend on the COVID because we had a job to save lives.
But how do these debts collectively affect Ghana's debt to GDP ratio?
Without the 54 billion debt for the three exceptional items, the COVID-19, the financial sector cleanup, and the energy sector excess capacity payments, Ghana's debt to GDP would be within the sustainability thresholds of some 68% instead of the 76.6% at the end of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, following the Russia-Ukraine war, energy and food prices skyrocketed globally. For many advanced economies, inflation reached 30 and 40-year highs. Inflation in Ghana has increased to 29.8% in June 2022. Global supply chains were disrupted and shipping costs increased by over 1,000%. Economic growth slowed down. Higher revenue projections in the 2022 budget, based on tax exemptions, property rates, and the e-levy, did not materialize.
Still on the IMF conversation, after a week of intense negotiations between governments of Ghana and reps of the fund, the Bretton Woods institution says it's committed to partnering government to get the economy back on track. The visit, which was the first part of negotiations with government, was part of efforts to assess the current economic situation and discuss the way forward in getting the economy to bounce back.
The initial discussions, which began on the 5th of July, saw the IMF team meet with Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, and the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. The Parliament's Finance Committee, civil society organizations and development partners, including UNICEF and the World Bank, to engage on social spending. Also, respective teams of the fund met officials of both the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana to begin work on the bailout being sought by the country. In a statement issued by the IMF, the fund noted that they had held initial discussions on a comprehensive reform package to restore macroeconomic stability and anchor debt sustainability. The team made progress in assessing the economic situation and identifying policy priorities in the near term. The discussions also focused on improving fiscal balances in a sustainable way while protecting the vulnerable and poor, ensuring credibility of the monetary policy and exchange rate regimes, preserving financial sector stability, and designing reforms to enhance growth, create jobs, and strengthen governance. At the conclusion of the visit, the IMF noted that Ghana is facing a challenging economic and social situation amid an increasingly difficult global environment. The fiscal and debt situation has severely worsened following the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, investors' concerns have triggered credit rating downgrades, capital outflows, loss of external market access, and the rising domestic borrowing costs. In addition, the global economic shock caused by the war in Ukraine is hitting Ghana at a time when the country is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic with limited room to maneuver. These adverse developments, according to the fund, have contributed to slowing economic growth, accumulation of unpaid bills, a large exchange rate depreciation, and a surge in inflation. While reaffirming the IMF's support to Ghana, the fund noted that its staff will continue to monitor the economic and social situation closely and engage in the coming weeks with the authorities on the formulation of their enhanced domestic program that could be supported by an IMF arrangement with broad stakeholder consultation.
Let's stay a while longer on Ghana's economy because the International Monetary Fund IMF Ghana rep, Dr. Albert Tunamama, believes Ghana's current economic issues are largely structural in nature. He therefore stressed that due diligence will be required before a program can be finally agreed on.
The visit by the IMF team, which was the first part of engagement with government, was part of efforts to assess the current economic situation and discuss the broad lines of the government's enhanced domestic program that could be supported by an IMF lending arrangement. In a statement issued by the team lead, Carlos Stralevich, the IMF noted that they held initial discussions on a comprehensive reform package to restore macroeconomic stability and anchor debt sustainability in Ghana. The team further reiterated the IMF's commitment to support Ghana as the country struggles to recover from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. In an interaction with Bernard Avle on the City Breakfast Show on the just-ended team visit, the IMF resident representative to Ghana, Dr. Albert Tunamama, noted that, unlike other problems that require a rapid credit facility, Ghana's issue is a structural one and would require increased due diligence to better appreciate the issues and formulate an effective program.
But you can also have balance of payment needs, coming from what I'll call more structural issues, right? And I think that's the case we are in Ghana. And for these cases, the expectation is that a rapid disbursement will not solve the problem, right? You really need to go into those structural issues in order to solve that need and be sure that after a couple of years, the country is back to some sort of an equilibrium. And it sounds easy in practice, but it sounds easy, but what we need to do in this case is really to have a lot of experts looking at, spending controls, PFM, domestic revenue mobilization, really in down to the details in order to have a set of levers that can be tracked during the program and can be put as targets for the government to achieve, right? And it takes a lot of work. So that's just the aspect of not only the assessment, but also designing the program itself.
Dr. Tunamama further added that the IMF will not lend money to a country with an unsustainable debt problem.
There is also the aspect of the policies of the fund. We need to lend consistent with a set of internal policies that the fund has, and I think one that has been quite discussed here in the media is, for example, that we cannot land into an unsustainable situation, right? So therefore, there are a lot of discussions around, how to. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the world we are in. We've not made that determination yet, but this is a policy, right? This is a policy, and therefore we need to, in our discussions, find ways to be able to lend to the country. So that's one type of lending as well, and we need to do our due diligence to.
We turn our attention now to the mid-year budget review. I'm sure you're eager to hear all that the government has put together in it and how that can translate into improving the current economic situation. Well, the presentation is on hold for now, and the government says it is because of the current engagement with the IMF.
According to Madam Abanose Asari, the postponement was to allow government officials focus fully on ongoing meetings with a delegation from the International Monetary Fund IMF. She says the first phase of meetings with the fund, which is mainly made up of data collection, is an important aspect of the process as the country seeks a bailout. Speaking to City Business News, Abanose Asari said leave of Parliament is being sought for the presentation to be done on the 25th of July.
This first mission is more of data collection, and so that is exactly what they are doing. And like I said, with data collection, you need to give them everything that they are requesting for. So we need that time and space to attend to them, just like you're doing an audit. You need to attend to whatever it is that they are asking for. And so once you do that and it's completed, we will come to Parliament and also submit the mid-year. And this is something we've been doing every time. And we scheduled the date for 13th before the announcement of the engagement with the IMF. So clearly, as human as we are, we should all understand that in this data finding mission of the IMF, we need that space and time to address that and give them, once we are done, 25th, we'll come to Parliament and do the mid-year budget review. And you should all know that per the PFM law, we have up until 31st of July to do that. So it's still within, the law and the time.
Meanwhile, after holding meetings with teams from the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance last week, the delegation from the International Monetary Fund earlier on Tuesday, July 12, 2022, met the Finance Committee of Parliament as part of ongoing negotiations. In an interaction with City News prior to the meeting, a member of the committee, Isaac Adongo, highlighted the country's COVID-19 expenditure bill, Bank of Ghana's financing of the national budget, among others, as key issues that needed to be on the minds of the IMF team.
But I'll ask them to open their eyes on arrears. The arrears of Ghana is in excess of 30 billion. But they will come and say arrears clearance 1.3 in the Article 4 consultation. When they ask them for the arrears, they say, oh, the arrears have not been audited. Since when did we audit arrears before we report them? Arrears is about a cut-off point. But because they have reported 8 billion, now they have to report over 30 billion. IMF, open your eyes there. COVID, open your eyes. Review all their documents, their budget statement, and whatever. Review, open your eyes. That's where the meat is. COVID. 3, IMF, if it's possible, go and sit at Bank of Ghana and check how much they have given to governments. The previous program that we had, we improved the inflation targeting framework by reining in what we call fiscal dominance over monetary policy. What that meant was that we didn't want a situation where the central bank was financing the national budget. And that is why we signed an MOU to observe the zero financing requirement. All of that was meant to curb inflation and to ensure that inflation expectations are anchored. In other words, it is easier to predict inflation. Today, inflation expectations are gone. Today, there is a return with impunity, fiscal dominance over monetary policy, illegally.
We remain on the mid-year budget review as the Association of Ghana Industries AGI believes Parliament must bring finality to the tax exemptions bill by passing it within the shortest possible time. The association believes there ought to be a sense of urgency in dealing with the issue because it is costing the country billions of cedis and, more importantly, a disincentive for local producers.
The push by the Association of Ghana Industries AGI follows calls by many stakeholders to government to put in place measures to ensure the state is not deprived of billions of cedis through tax exemptions every year. The tax exemptions bill was laid in Parliament in the first quarter of 2019 to, among other things, harmonize the tax exemption and incentives regime in the country and help make it more efficient. It will comprise tax waivers given to local and foreign companies to encourage increased investment and more foreign direct investment in the Ghanaian economy. In November last year, government announced that plans were far advanced for the passage of the tax exemptions bill as Cabinet was deliberating on the final drafts of the bill. However, last month, government withdrew the bill from Parliament to make way for corrections and amendments. Already data from the Institute of Economic Affairs IEA shows that Ghana loses over 5 billion Ghana cedis every year through tax exemptions alone. In an interview with City Business News, the Greater Accra Regional Chair of the Association of Ghana Industries, Chonam Akpelo, urged government to use the upcoming mid-year budget review to expedite action on the passage of the bill into law to streamline the administration of exemptions to help prevent more revenue leakages.
The tax exemption bill has been on the table for quite some time now. It's been one of the things that we've been advocating for because we believe that it's a high time that Parliament finally pass this bill into law. The issue is that the tax exemption bill has not been properly streamlined in the past. It appears that it's subject to discretion of officials of the ministry. And as a result, we believe government is losing a lot of revenue. And at the same time, it's almost as though it's for cronies and so on, or people who are generally friends with government and so on. We feel that as industry, we need to have this properly streamlined in order that our members are fully aware of the requirement of qualifying to be able to access tax exemption. That way, it gets all of our people to prepare and to apply themselves to accessing some of these tax exemptions.
We have more reactions ahead of the presentation of the mid-year budget review because the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, is calling for a downward revision of the current rates of the electronic transfer levy, the e-levy. This, ISE believes, might help improve the low revenue levels of the policy witnessed so far.
The presentation of the mid-year budget review by the Minister of Finance comes as Ghana engages the International Monetary Fund for balance of payment support. Currently, the country's revenue projections are underperforming, while high debt levels and high expenditure continues to pose problems. One of the sources government was hoping would help it raise much-needed revenue is the e-levy, but information from government quarters indicates that it is underperforming woefully. Commenting on the e-levy ahead of the 2022 mid-year budget presentation, Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, Professor Peter Quote, argued against the taxes scrapping but called for the rate to be reduced.
I expect the Minister of Finance to look at the e-levy, for instance. It is not yielding the needed revenue. I think we have to revise the rate downwards. And if we have to then tighten some of the concessions that have been given to some that's fine. But I think the rate has to be revised downwards. So I expect the finance minister to do the same so that we can continue to raise some revenue from e-levy. Because a lot of investment have gone into this e-levy and we can't just scrap it within 6 months or so. We ought to look at that as well. I expect that some critical areas, manufacturing, agriculture, would receive some support as and when necessary.
On his part, former Finance Minister Seth Terkper once again bemoaned the negative impact of the e-levy on ordinary Ghanaians. According to him, apart from being poorly designed and inequitable, the controversial tax policy adds to the operational cost of new and innovative businesses within the technology space. Commenting on the e-levy ahead of the presentation of the mid-year budget review, Mr. Terkper urged government to look for ways to provide new businesses with incentives to facilitate their growth.
Listen, when you have initiatives which are new. When you have initiatives which are new, like our young people and the rest who are doing all this and, following MTN and putting programs and things, IT programs and things in place, what do? They are the ones who should get tax concessions. They are the ones who should, they are not the ones who should suffer the tax. So every new industry, yes. So we are doing the reverse. You have old industries and we keep renewing their incentives. And then when new industries come, we rather tax them instead of providing them with incentives. That's another angle to the whole, technology. And what you are saying is that, with people opting not to use it, you are killing that initiative. You are killing its growth. Precisely, that is what it means. Right? So as to scrapping it, all I can say is that there are better alternatives.
While the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISA, is calling for a reduction in the rate of the e-levy, the Traders Advocacy Group Ghana TAG wants it capped, just as is done by the telcos. They want the tax flattened at some point because they argue that many of them have resorted to cash transactions to avoid paying the charge, which they stress is very exorbitant.
The 1.5% levy on various electronic transactions was introduced in the 2022 budget as part of the government's effort to improve the country's revenues. However, the policy received stiff opposition from various groups, including the minority in parliament and the Association of Momo Vendors, amongst others, who felt it was a tax on already taxed income and a disincentive to the cashlight agenda. What does the trading community make of the policy 2 months into its implementation? Nana Opoku is the secretary of the Traders Advocacy Group Ghana TAG.
Traders can attest to the fact that the aftermath of the introduction of e-levy has negatively affected cash transactions within the trading fraternity. We were expecting, per their projections, that it would go for the government to achieve whatever that they actually put together to achieve. But we could all see that it has failed. It has failed because they did not listen to traders. Concurrently, traders are on cash transactions as I speak. If somebody walk to my shop, I'm expecting cash. Because if you ask me that you are going to transact money and the inconveniences alone will not even permit me to transact business with these, the comfort that we used to have. I would say the comfort is no.
The levy was introduced to generate about 6.9 billion Ghana cedis this year, but there are reports that it currently has only raised about 10% of the target for the period. This, among others, forced the government to seek an International Monetary Fund bailout program. But with a few days to the presentation of the mid-year budget review, what do the traders expect to be done about the policy?
What we are calling on government and then the players on this e-levy thing, I believe they have a secretariat now. What they should do is to cap it. Just cap it, because the telcos have done it, and from a certain point to a certain point, you don't go further. So they should learn from the telcos and then do it right. If they are able to do it right, I think realization of the revenue expected could be achieved.
75% of Ghanaians disapprove of the electronic transfer levy. This was captured in a recent report by the Afrobarometer led by the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, which sampled data from 2,400 adult Ghanaians in April this year. The Afrobarometer report further revealed that only 2 in 10 Ghanaians endorse the new tax, while 76% of them think the e-levy is a bad idea because it will increase the tax burden on the poor and ordinary citizens. 75% of Ghanaians also expressed doubt that the government will fulfill its pledge to use the revenues generated by the e-levy to fund development programs. Dr. Edem Selome is the Director of Research at the Center of Democratic Development, CDD.
We wanted to see, we haven't shown any of these demographics by region, but with this, we thought it was important to see what the regions look like in terms of who disapproves the e-levy. Again, you see a reflection of that generally, except when you come to the Ashanti region where there's a split as to whether they really disapprove or approve of it. So I am also going to share with you whether people are confident about the use of the e-levy funds. Again, we see that more than half of those we surveyed said that they are not confident at all that money generated from the e-levy will be used well or for what it's intended.
Faced with the e-levy, Ghanaians were about evenly split as to whether they will continue to use electronic financial transactions, with 47% of them stating that they would continue to use the service, while 49% indicated that they would avoid using them.
The thing about taxation is people would either avoid it, and that's not refusing to pay tax, it's a difference. So we wanted to see tax avoidance as well. So we wanted to know who intends to continue using, the channels that would, end up taxing them when they use the channel. Again, we see a split there. The Ghanaians are quite divided in terms of their views or whether they want to avoid e-levy using channels that would, put the e-levy burden on them or not.
This development reinforces calls by various stakeholders for a downward review of the rate or its complete scrapping, as it failed to attain government's revenue targets and further worsened the country's revenue position. When asked whether they felt the country was heading in the right direction, this is what they had to say.
We see that majority of Ghanaians say that the country is heading in the wrong direction. And they offer very negative assessments of the country's economic condition and their own personal living conditions. You can see from there that it's only 11% of Ghanaians who say the country is going in the right direction. We also see a 15% drop since 2017, and I'll keep this on for a while. So we study it a bit. That is, the only time that we saw that kind of dip was in 2014. Where we conducted the survey, and then of course it went up beyond the almost 60% in 2019, and has dropped so steeply. 35, and has dropped steeply to 11% just a few years, 3 years.
Some of the panelists at the launch of the report shared their thoughts on the findings.
I believe that this is a wake-up call to government, because when you see that trend, it tells you that confidence in government and government institutions to deliver on the mandate as reposed in them by the Constitution is actually going down, and that is not good enough. And I'm sure if you had done this survey like a week ago, just after the government caved in, I won't say they announced, they caved in by calling on the IMF, I'm sure you would have seen probably a worse response in terms of confidence in managing the economy and all of that.
The supposed economic growth numbers, those big macro numbers that are being bandied about, hides a much bigger picture, which is that inequality is actually worsening in the country. So the benefits or the trade-offs of those growth is actually not necessarily translating to the ordinary man on the street. So in that respect, that is largely, conclusive, or the findings from this survey is largely conclusive with other ones or other research that myself and I, Prof and others have very well been involved in over the period.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a news search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
There appears to be a growing opportunity in cocoa processing because Ghana generated almost $1 billion last year from the export of processed cocoa. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority is encouraging potential investors to take advantage of this by investing in the sector.
The report revealed that the total earnings on non-traditional exports for 2021 were about $3.03 billion, a 17% increase from 2020 return of $2.85 billion. Ghana's non-traditional exports over the last 5 years have grown by about 7% and contributed almost 23% to the total national merchandise exports in 2021. Cocoa paste, cocoa butter, and cocoa powder contributed almost $1 billion, growing by an average of about 36% from the previous year. Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, Dr. Ifua Asabia Asare, has been commenting on this development.
This is because we have been intentional about adding value to cocoa instead of sending everything out raw. A lot of small businesses have started manufacturing the cocoa beans into chocolates, cocoa powder, into liqueur, and I think this is also what is occasioning the rise in the statistics earnings of value-added cocoa beans. It is because we focused on that. We tried sending our products to so many countries, to the global market. It was very well accepted. The little that we sent was very well accepted. So then we came back and did our homework very well. And we've been collaborating very well with the small businesses that are now into cocoa processing.
She further encouraged prospecting investors to take advantage of the growing cocoa processing industry. This is particularly crucial as the government has been on an industrialization agenda.
Potential investors are welcome to now set up factories, to partner with our small businesses who are already, the SMEs who are already in this sector, to grow that industry. There's so much potential in that industry.
Deforestation is a major issue in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, which together produce nearly 2/3 of the world's supply of cocoa. Both countries respectively lost 25% and 8% of their primary forest between 2002 and 2019 due to cocoa farming. The Ghana Cocoa Board is worried about the situation and wants it addressed immediately.
Africa's top cocoa-producing nations, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, continue to see huge areas of forest being destroyed to make room for cocoa production. Data analysis by global advocacy organization Mighty Earth earlier this year revealed that overall levels of deforestation remain near record highs 4.5 years after chocolate companies and governments committed in the Cocoa and Forest Initiative (CFI) to a ban on establishing any new cocoa farms. The report disclosed that even after the cocoa industry published action plans in the CFI, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana have lost 19,421 hectares and 39,497 hectares of forest respectively within cocoa growing areas with a high rate of deforestation of 3.9%. The Ghana Cocoa Board has described this situation as disheartening and believes this issue must be tackled with all urgency. The CEO of the board, Joseph Boahin Edu, spoke during a high-level meeting with senior representatives of the cocoa value chain from Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, which sought to discuss challenges both countries are facing in the sector.
Climate change is not just restricted to maybe Australia or United States or China, or, whatever. We are all feeling it. It's everywhere. And critically, we are encouraging our farmers not to expand, not to cut any forest anymore, just to ensure that we have enough forest to protect this planet which we all love and we want to live on. But once we forge some kind of alignment with EU to get a solution to this problem, we are also aware that some industry actors are now moving into large-scale cocoa plantation elsewhere, cutting forests. So what kind of story are you telling us? Because in one breath, you are asking us to stop cutting forests. Even for a smallholder farmer, is being asked not to cut any forest anymore. In another breath, the industry players themselves, multinationals, are entering into large-scale cocoa plantations outside Africa. And for us, again, it's unfair.
We remain on agriculture as the sector ministry has been on a campaign for the institution of a legislation to compel financial institutions to lend to farmers. Interestingly, the Ghana Association of Banks does not think it's a great idea.
According to the Bank of Ghana's May 2022 Monetary Policy Report, at 3.5%, the agriculture, forestry and fishing sectors are the second lowest recipients of credit to the private sector as at April 2022, only faring better than the mining and quarrying sector, which received 1.8% of credits from banks in Ghana. The same report shows that the services sector received the biggest chunk of credit given out by banks at 33.4%, a significant jump from 29.4% in April last year. Speaking on the matter of low credit to the agricultural sector at a recent event, the sector minister, Dr. Owusu-Efere-Akoto, mentioned that government is considering a legislation that will compel banks to lend more to the sector. But in an interview with City Business News, the CEO of the Ghana Association of Banks, John Ewa, said free market forces should be allowed to determine where the funds of banks go to.
It's a free market economy. As much as possible, we want the market to be the way it is in terms of making it free market and allowing the forces of demand and supply to determine the price of items. Just like any, money is a commodity. Just like any other commodity, we allow the market forces to determine the consumer demand and supply to determine the outcome of the decisions. But the point is that, yes, we all believe that lending to agricultural sector is critical. And as banks, we also take note of that. And if you go through GHS, I'm sure the GHS report will really tell you that banks have actively been partnering with GHS to increase and deepen the lending of the banking system to that sector. We are not so much, in favor of legislating, lending. And if in the likely event that something happens in that sector, who do you blame? Is it the one who legislated and provided funding to that sector, or is it the banks that provided the lending? We need to be very cautious.
Constant skills improvement is critical to sustain one's relevance in any industry. This is why the Aya Institute for Finance and Management has been set up in partnership with GIZ to provide training for financial sector staff and interested out-of-school graduates.
Many individuals and companies often make uninformed choices when utilizing financial services due to lack of or inadequate financial education and the inability of financial sector staff to provide suitable financial solutions and valuable services. To foster the continued growth of the Ghanaian financial services sector and ensure inclusion in a challenging and evolving market environment, more digitally minded, well-trained talent is required. It is for this reason that the Aya Institute for Finance and Management has started offering technical and soft skills training in open and tailor-made formats, as well as a job readiness module that ensures university graduates are made fit for a career in the financial sector in a 3-month intensive training session that includes a 4-week internship phase. Kesewa Brown, the executive director of the institute, has been speaking to City Business News.
What we want to make sure is to introduce world-class training or learning experience to the participants. Because if you go to an average, let's say, training in Ghana, it's typically PowerPoint slides, somebody talking. We want to show people that there's more to learning by introducing the methodologies that would help learners to retain what they have learned during the period and to have the ability to actually be able to go back to their offices and practice.
Gerald Guskowski, the head of the Network for Inclusive Development Cluster at GIZ, also stressed on how important the introduction of the Young Professionals Program is helping to bridge the unemployment gap.
Here we notice that from the point of view of the companies, graduates lack various soft skills as well as special technical competences in order to be able to enter the job directly. This is exactly why, together with our partners, we are introducing the Young Professionals Program as part of this partnership. The Young Professional Program is a 12-week intensive training program that includes a 4-week internship at one of our partner companies. For this year alone, we plan to have 50 participants, out of which at least 35 should have found a permanent and decent job afterwards. Planning to scale it up in the coming years further together with partner universities and corporate partners of the sector, and thus bring as many young people into decent jobs as possible.
Ghana's inflation rate has risen again to almost 30% in the month of June. This is another increment from figures in May. This comes as many stakeholders continue to mount pressure on the government and the Bank of Ghana to quickly institute measures to check the worrying rise in the inflation rate.
The increase in inflation rate for the month of June comes at a time where Ghanaians continue to mount pressure on the government to quickly institute measures to check the continuous rise in the consumer price index. Ghana currently has a total public debt stock of 391.9 billion Ghana cedis as of the end of the first quarter of 2022. The cedi is also the worst performing African currency after falling some 22% against the dollar this year. Meanwhile, the government has blamed its woes on a combination of external forces, including COVID-19, the Russian-Ukraine war, and American and Chinese economic downturns. In order to salvage the situation, the government has now turned to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout of almost $2 billion to shore up its finances to support the economy. Despite efforts such as the increase in monetary policy rate aimed at addressing the inflationary pressures, the situation still persists. The month of June has seen another rise to hit 29.9%, mainly driven by transport, which includes fuel, registering the highest price growth at 41.6%. The government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobina Enim, explains into details other influences of the current rate.
A regional perspective, we identified the Eastern region recording the highest rate of inflation of 35.8%, and the Upper East region the least inflation of 21.0%. From a food and non-food perspective, we recorded food inflation of 30.7% for the month of June 2022, and non-food recording an inflation rate of 29.1%. It should be indicated that we saw a much steeper increase in non-food inflation rising by 3.4% from May 2022 to June 2022, and a much flatter increase for food inflation, increasing by 0.6 percentage points between May 2022 and June 2022. From a domestic inflation and imported inflation perspective, we respectively recorded inflation rates of 29.2% and 31.3%. So for the third time in a row, we see imported inflation recording rates higher than the domestic inflation, otherwise known as locally produced items. We see domestic inflation increasing from 27.3% to 29.2%, while imported inflation increasing from 28.2% to 31.3%. On a month-on-month basis, between May 2022 and June 2022, price of goods and services went up by 3.0%, indicating a slowdown in the rate of inflation on a month-on-month basis. As on a month-on-month basis, we recorded 4.1% for the month of May 2022, relative to the 3.0% that was recorded for the month of June 2022.
For the first time in quite a while, fuel prices are anticipated to drop slightly at the pumps. The Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana (COPEC) has indicated that we might be buying fuel at about 6% less than current prices. However, that has hinged on the stability of the cedi against the dollar. This reduction, according to the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana (COPEC), will reflect at the pumps soon, barring any further depreciation of the cedi against the dollar. Petrol currently is selling at 11 cedis 59 pesos per litre, while diesel is at 14 cedis 59 pesos per litre. Duncan Amwa is the Executive Secretary of COPEC, and he has been explaining what is accounting for the expected reduction in fuel prices.
And you do have relative stability in the currency. Two, you also have international market price declines. Benchmarks for Plat has seen some reductions where diesel has done almost 11%, petrol has done about 3.6%. The two together with the forex, we are expecting at least some 5% drop in price. In nominal terms, 60 pesos thereabout should decline as far as your pumps are concerned from Monday thereabout.
He added that the reduction could have been higher, but for the recent removal of some of government's earlier interventions.
We are still of the view that the finance minister should find a way around some of the very high taxes, particularly the price stabilization and recovery levy of 16 pesos at a time like this, and to continue to charge the ordinary person for money for a fund to stabilize petrol prices. I think it's unconscionable, and something could be done in greater proportion to bring prices lower than we currently seeing.
He, however, reiterated the need for the government to take a second look at the tax build-up in the cost of fuel to help mitigate the constant hikes in fuel prices.
It was disappointing for the NPA to be asked to reinstate the 15 peso rebate that Ghanaians had been given. We were hopeful that that intervention will be sustained in order that fuel price could at least be tracked, and also hoping that it could come down a bit. The 14, 13, 12 Ghana cedi is still very high, and I'm certain that is one of the core reasons virtually every Ghanaian is today complaining. But thankfully, the window ahead and the subsequent windows look like we're going to have some reliefs. The only caution I would want to put in here is that the OMCs, the BDCs, should be mindful that we are watching. We would not be any charitable if they decided not to give these reductions at the pumps due to what they often term as, recoverable losses or whatever margins that they lost in previous windows.
Stakeholders in the tourism industry across the country are appealing to implementers of the Ghana Tourism and Development Project to ensure due diligence and fairness in the disbursement of the $10 million grant to industry players. The $10 million grant, which is the third phase of the $14 million World Bank grants program, is to be disbursed as part of the COVID-19 response grant to revive and improve the sector.
The Ghana Tourism Development Project is a $40 million World Bank grant to the government of Ghana under the International Development Association credit, targeted at specific tourism, art and culture destinations in the country. The grant seeks to strengthen the tourism environment to address constraints mostly likely to have transformative impact on the tourism sector in Ghana, developing tourism sites and destinations, diversify the leisure tourism offers by identifying and upgrading most promising and destination sites to ensure that all players benefit from the third phase of the $10 million grant. The GTDP met stakeholders in the Volta, Oti, and Eastern regions at Koforidua to enlighten them on how to apply for the grant. Professor Gabriel Sean, the technical advisor of the Ghana Tourism Development Project, who spoke about the project objectives, believes the grant is a game changer.
The GTDP, as we call it, the Ghana Tourism Development Project, has got two main aims: to develop site and the grants. All together, we want to form the amalgam of synergy in the system to be able to help us to be able to carve out a competitive edge, and not just carve out a competitive edge in the tourism space in Africa and beyond, but to sustain it as well. And that is why this grant is saying that, yes, we see you doing your best, but you are struggling. Government is coming in to give you this push that you need.
Since the inception of COVID-19, data of some facilities were taken as part of processes for them to get access to the COVID-19 relief package to cushion the tourism industry. Even though some facilities got access to the package, majority were left in the woods. But players at this engagement who have welcomed the initiative believe this time around due processes will be followed for them to also get access to the grant.
For various benefits in the past, we were given the assurance that yes, we are on point, we were going to hear from them. Little did they come back telling us that maybe you have GHS and you haven't abided by the rules, but all they did was to keep assuring us for the COVID-19 and all others. We thought we were part of it, but up to date, when it's 2020 to 2021 budget, we haven't received anything.
The CEO of the Ghana Tourism Development Company, Kojo Entry, gave an assurance that processes of awarding the grant will not be based on political affiliations, but on competence.
There's no portion, for instance, for ticking the box of which party you belong to. Absolutely not. And if you belong to a certain party, perhaps a party in government, and you have no tourism enterprise, you cannot apply. So we can be certain that there's no plan anywhere to favor certain people. The rules are strict. I can't help you if you call me because I am perhaps one of the leaders in the tourism sector. This is a system that has been put in place. That's why we have removed all the individuals or the human interfaces from the process and just allowing the technology to do the selection.
The grants are for sector-wide targets such as travel trade enterprises like travel agency, car rentals, tourism accommodation facilities, banqueting facilities providers, events and beverages, manufacturing of tourism artifacts and crafts, fashion and dressmaking. Kojo Entry believes that the grant will help players improve their sites and employ a number of people to reduce the unemployment situation in the country.
Well, that will be all for today's edition of the Business Weekly Show here on City TV, your most watched business show in the country. For more business stories, check out our website, citybusinessnews.com. And don't miss out on the Business Dashboard, which airs on City TV at 10 p.m. sharp every weekday, with a repeat the following day at 7 and 10:30 a.m. My name is Michael Obodu. Let's connect on Twitter at @mobodu. Catch you same time next week. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay informed. Bye-bye.